"You're not invited to the wedding, Mrs. Carter. Daniel belongs to me now. Oh, and take your $60,000 back. Consider it a consolation prize." Those words struck harder than any storm that ever swept across Charleston. They dropped into my kitchen like stones, rattling every photograph on the wall and every memory in my heart. If you're watching this, subscribe and tell me where you're watching from. I stood frozen in the doorway, my hand gripping the wooden frame as if it could keep me upright. My husband, Richard, came up behind me, his palm steady on my shoulder, yet nothing could steady the fire that spread through my chest. Brianna, my son's fiancée, didn't even wait for permission. Her heels clicked across the tiles of the kitchen Richard and I had built over 40 years, each strike a drumbeat of arrogance. She brushed her manicured hand against the old oak chair at the head of the table, the very chair where Daniel had eaten his cereal before school, where he practiced spelling lists, where we said grace before every meal. Her touch turned that chair into a weapon, as if she were staking a claim on history that was never hers. The air smelled faintly of coffee, mingled with magnolia blossoms drifting in from the garden. It had always been a scent of comfort, of family, but now, even the air seemed poisoned by her words. Toxic, she called me, as if years of sacrifice, nights waiting for Daniel to come home safe, weekends spent working extra shifts just to save for his college, could be reduced to a single slur. I wanted to scream, wanted to shout that I had carried Daniel through every storm, that I had held him up when he broke his arm at Little League, that I had stood in the rain at his graduation with tears of pride. Instead, my voice failed me. Silence wrapped around me like chains. Richard's jaw tightened, but he stayed calm. He knew one outburst would cost us everything, so he waited. But I couldn't wait. I whispered, barely audible. "Why, Brianna? Why erase us?" She smirked, smoothing her dress as if she had already won. "Because some people belong in the past. And that's where you'll stay." Her heels clicked away, the door slamming behind her like a verdict. I stood in the kitchen, staring at the chair she had touched. My chest ached, as if all the years of motherhood had been stripped from me in an instant. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat at the table with the recipe box my grandmother had given me, its cards stained with ink and flour. Next to it lay the envelope labeled Wedding Fund, $60,000, both symbols of sacrifice, both mocked by Brianna's cruelty. As dawn broke over the Charleston rooftops, I whispered to myself, she thinks she has won. But this isn't the end. Not yet. The morning after Brianna's verdict, the kitchen felt like a stranger's place. The same sunlight poured across the oak table. The same scent of magnolia drifted through the window. Yet everything was changed. I couldn't look at the chair without hearing her voice again. "Daniel belongs to me now." I sat there with a cup of coffee gone cold, my fingers wrapped so tightly around the mug that my knuckles ached. Across the table, Richard stirred his with deliberate calm, but the tightness in his jaw betrayed him. He was furious, yet he said nothing, waiting for me to speak first. "Do you think she was telling the truth?" I whispered finally. My voice cracked, betraying the question I dreaded most. "Do you think Daniel really doesn't want us there?" Richard set his spoon down carefully, too carefully. "Evelyn, that wasn't our son. That was her voice. She's been planting seeds in him for months. I wanted to believe him. But the words Brianna had chosen, toxic, interference, stay in the past, kept cutting into me like knives. Words only Daniel could have repeated if she hadn't whispered them to him first. I looked around the kitchen for comfort, but everywhere I turned, there were reminders. The refrigerator plastered with photographs. Daniel as a baby with cake smeared across his cheeks. Daniel holding up his high school diploma, his grin so wide he forgot to straighten his cap. Daniel at the pier with Richard, holding up his first catch. Memories that screamed love, Yet somehow Brianna had twisted them into chains of control. I pressed my forehead into my hands. Had I loved him too tightly? Had every sacrifice looked like suffocation in his eyes? Doubt seeped into me like poison, the very poison Brianna wanted me to swallow. Richard's hand found mine across the table, warm and steady. "Don't let her rewrite your story," he said softly. "You raised him with love. That's not control." But his words couldn't erase the echo of Brianna's heels on our kitchen floor, the smug tilt of her smile as she mocked our sacrifices. I had been blindsided, stripped of dignity in my own home. That night, I wandered the house, unable to rest. In the living room, I lingered before the gallery wall of photographs, 40 years of family framed in wood and glass. My eyes stopped at one picture in particular. Daniel, age 10, holding up a baseball trophy, his cheeks flushed with triumph. I remembered the heat of the bleachers, the cheers, the way he had waved at me in the stands, as if I were the only person in the world who mattered. Tears blurred the image. That boy, so full of love, could not be the same man who allowed Brianna to erase me, unless she had made him blind. Unless she had woven her lies so tightly around him that he could no longer see who I was. I returned to the kitchen, sat down at the oak table, and placed my palm on the chair she had touched. Cold, empty, but a thought surfaced. Quiet, but sharp. People don't act this cruel without reason. She's hiding something. And in that moment, humiliation hardened into resolve. If Brianna thought she could exile me, she had underestimated the wrong mother. By the third sleepless night, the humiliation no longer burned. It settled deeper, into something colder, something sharper. I knew Brianna hadn't just acted on impulse. Her cruelty was too rehearsed, her words too precise. She was hiding something, and if Daniel couldn't see it, then I would. The name came to me while I stood at the kitchen sink, staring out at the magnolia tree Daniel had once climbed as a boy, Nora Whitfield, my old colleague from the county office. Back then, she had been the woman everyone turned to when the truth seemed buried. After retirement, she'd become a private investigator, and word was she never lost a case. I dialed her number with trembling hands. The line clicked, and her voice, steady and warm, came through. "Evelyn Carter, it's been years. What's wrong?" I swallowed hard. "Nora, I need your help. It's about my son's fiancée." There was a pause, then the sound of papers shuffling. "Tell me everything." I poured it all out: the kitchen humiliation, the $60,000 sneer, the way Brianna used words like toxic and boundaries to drive a wedge between us. Nora listened in silence, only interrupting once to ask, "And Daniel? Does he believe her?" My voice cracked. "I don't know anymore." She exhaled slowly. "Then we start with her. People like that don't operate in a vacuum. They leave trails." 2 days later, Nora arrived at our Charleston home, a leather satchel slung over her shoulder. She was older now, silver streaking her dark hair, but her eyes hadn't lost their edge. We sat at the oak table, yes, the very one Brianna had poisoned with her arrogance, and spread papers across it like weapons. "Brianna Cole," Nora began, adjusting her glasses. "Or should I say, Brianna Jameson, or perhaps Anna Coalfield. She's used at least 3 names in the last decade." My stomach tightened. "3 names?" Nora nodded grimly. "And each time, the pattern's the same. She moves to a new city, attaches herself to a man with stability, drains him emotionally and financially, and then vanishes." Richard leaned forward, his voice low but fierce. "How much are we talking about?" Nora slid a photograph across the table. Brianna with another man, his arm wrapped around her waist, his smile wide with devotion. This man lost $200,000 before she disappeared. She told him she was pregnant. When he asked for proof, she vanished overnight. New name, new city. I felt the blood drain from my face. A fake pregnancy. A lie that twisted the most sacred bond of all. Nora's voice was steady. People like her project their poison. She called you toxic because she needed you silenced. That way, Daniel would never question her. I pressed my palm against the oak table, grounding myself. Every insult Brianna had hurled parasite. Interference. Toxic wasn't truth. It was camouflage. For the first time since that awful day, clarity cut through the fog. This wasn't just about being uninvited to a wedding. This was about saving my son from a predator. I looked at Richard, then back at Nora. Gather everything. Records, photos, statements. If she wants a war, she'll get one. But we'll fight with truth. And as Nora closed her satchel with a decisive snap, I knew the battle for Daniel's soul had only just begun. The next week, our dining table became less a place for meals and more a war room. Papers spread across the polished oak like battle maps, photocopies of leases, bank statements, photographs of Brianna with men I had never seen. The evidence was stark, ugly, undeniable. Nora adjusted her glasses, her tone calm but edged with steel. She's done this before, Evelyn. More than once. Look here, Charlotte. North Carolina. 5 years ago. She went by Anna Coalfield. Same pattern. Moved in with a man who managed a car dealership. Within 6 months, he had emptied his savings for her business venture. She walked away with $80,000 and left him in debt. Richard leaned over the paperwork, his brows furrowed. And Daniel? He has no idea? None, Nora confirmed. To him, she's the first love who sees his potential. That's her gift. She convinces men their devotion is proof of strength, when really it's their weakness she's after. I stared at one photograph in particular, Brianna younger, hair darker but the same smirk on her lips. Beside her, a man grinned proudly, his hand on her stomach as if expecting a child. She told him she was pregnant. Nora explained quietly. But there was no child. When he started asking questions, she filed a restraining order, claimed he was unstable, but the records show he never even raised his voice. It was her exit strategy, clean and brutal. A chill ran through me. A fake pregnancy, to weaponize something sacred, something life itself, was beyond cruelty. My chest tightened, and now she sits in my kitchen, calling me toxic. Nora's eyes softened, but her voice remained firm. That's how she works. She projects. She convinces her victims that their families are the problem, so she can isolate them. Once they're cut off, she takes control completely. I pressed my hand flat against the table, my wedding ring cold against the wood. I remembered the way Brianna had smoothed her dress before delivering her verdict. How confident she had been that day. She thought we were powerless. She thought Daniel would never hear a word against her. But the papers told a different story. The truth was etched in ink and photographs, in contracts and leases, in names abandoned like old costumes. Richard's fist came down hard on the table, making the papers jump. She's going to ruin him. His savings, his future, his dignity, she'll strip him bare. I flinched at the sound, but didn't stop him. His anger mirrored my own, though mine burned colder, deeper. For days I had replayed her words. You're not invited. Toxic. Stay in the past. Now, with every page Nora uncovered, those insults shifted into something else. Proof of her fear. Fear of being exposed. I met Nora's gaze. We can't confront Daniel yet. If we push too hard, she'll twist it, make me look controlling, just like she said. Nora nodded slowly. Then we need her to reveal herself. People like Brianna always overplay their hand. We just have to let her. I glanced at the old oak chair, the same one she had claimed with her touch. My voice was quiet, but resolute. And when she speaks the truth herself, Daniel will have no choice but to see. The chair stood silent in the corner, but in my mind, it was no longer a symbol of defeat. It was a throne waiting for the truth to sit down. The plan was simple on paper, but it carried the weight of my entire future with Daniel. Nora laid it out over the oak table, as if we were planning a court case. You can't shout at her, Evelyn. You can't even accuse her. Let her speak. Let her think she's winning. That's when the mask slips. I nodded, though my stomach knotted with dread. Pretending humility in front of the woman who had called me toxic felt unbearable. Yet I knew Nora was right. Anger would only prove Brianna's point. The only weapon strong enough was her own voice, captured on record. Nora slid a small device across the table, no bigger than a lipstick tube. Its red light blinked once when I pressed the switch. Keep it in your purse, she instructed. Don't touch it once it's on. Just let her talk. Richard frowned deeply, his hand tightening around mine. And if she says nothing? If she keeps the act? She won't, Nora said, with quiet certainty. Women, like her, thrive on control. The moment she feels Evelyn is begging, she'll gloat. That's when she'll expose herself. The cafe Nora chose was small, tucked on a cobblestone street by the river. Neutral ground. No familiar faces, no family history echoing in the walls. Just the clink of cups, the hiss of an espresso machine, the steady hum of strangers' conversations. That morning, I dressed carefully, deliberately plain. A navy sweater, a simple pearl necklace nothing Brianna could sneer at as ostentation. I wanted her to believe she had stripped me of dignity, that she had the upper hand. Inside, I was shaking. I arrived early. The waitress placed a steaming cup of tea in front of me, but my hands trembled too much to lift it. Across the street, Richard waited in our car, pretending to read a newspaper, though I knew his eyes never left the door. Nora was stationed further down, watching from behind dark glasses. Her phone, ready. When Brianna finally appeared, she did so like she was stepping onto a stage. Her heels struck the pavement with practiced rhythm. Her hair flawless, her smile polished. She spotted me instantly and walked in with the air of a queen meeting a subject. "Hello, Evelyn," she said, sliding into the chair across from me. The sound of my name in her mouth made my skin crawl. I forced a small smile. "Thank you for coming. I know your time is valuable." She waved a manicured hand dismissively. "I wasn't sure I should, but Michael would want me to at least hear you out." Her tone sliced through me, but I steadied my breath. The recorder blinked red inside my purse. All I needed was patience. I lowered my eyes, pretending to fold under her power. "We've had so many misunderstandings. I don't want tension to ruin Michael's happiness. Please, tell me what I've done wrong." Her lips curled into a smirk. I saw the glint of triumph in her eyes, the same glint I had seen in my kitchen. She thought she had already won. And I knew then. The mask was about to slip. Brianna leaned back in her chair, crossing her legs with the elegance of someone who believed the world revolved around her. She picked up the menu, glanced at it, then set it down with a smirk. "You really want to know what you did wrong, Evelyn?" My throat was dry, but I forced myself to nod. "Yes, I only tried to be part of your lives." She laughed quietly. The kind of laugh meant to wound. That's exactly the problem. You try too hard. Always giving advice. Always inserting yourself. Michael doesn't need a mother hovering over him anymore. He needs a wife who knows how to guide him. The words hit me like slaps, but I kept my eyes lowered, nails digging into my palms beneath the table. The recorder blinked inside my purse. Every word was being saved. "Guide him?" I asked softly, feigning confusion. Brianna's smile widened. She stirred her coffee, as if discussing the weather. Of course. He listens to me now. He trusts me. I've helped him see that money shouldn't be wasted on people who guilt him. You know how you used to push him to pay for every little thing? Family trips, charities, even your kitchen remodel? That won't happen anymore. He belongs to me now, and I'll keep him where I need him. The last sentence pierced deeper than the rest. He belongs to me. She said it with pride, not shame. The mask had slipped. No, it had fallen. I gripped my cup to keep my hands from trembling. So you believe I guilt him? I whispered. Of course you did. She leaned forward, her eyes gleaming. That's what parents do. They hold on too long. But it doesn't work on Michael anymore. With me, he'll have everything. Without me, he'd still be clinging to you. Her words sliced through me. But I forced myself to stay still. I thought of Daniel as a boy, waving from the baseball field, shouting "Mom," as if I were his world. To Brianna, that love was weakness. To her, my devotion was a weapon she had to strip away. I glanced around the cafe. The chatter of strangers, the hiss of steaming milk, the clink of cups, it all seemed distant. My focus narrowed on the blinking red light inside my purse. She had given me everything. Her arrogance was now evidence. I drew in a steady breath, leaning closer, my voice quiet, trembling just enough to sound defeated. Please, Brianna. He's my only son. I just want to be part of his life. Her smile turned cruel, deliberate. And that's exactly why you won't be. Because you'll always put your needs before his. But I won't. I know how to make him stronger. He belongs with me, not with you. The words were final, venomous, and damning. She finished her coffee, rose smoothly, and smoothed her dress. This was a waste of time, but at least now you know where things stand. Her heels clicked away, the door shutting behind her like the echo of a gavel. I sat, frozen, hands trembling, heart racing. Then, slowly, I exhaled. Richard slipped into the seat beside me, his face pale but resolute. Did you hear her? He whispered. I nodded, my voice low but steady. Every word. And so did the recorder. That night, the three of us sat in the living room, the glow of a single lamp casting long shadows across the walls. On the coffee table lay Nora's laptop, its screen black but waiting. My hands twisted in my lap, clammy with both fear and anticipation. Richard sat stiffly beside me, his jaw set like stone. Across from us, Nora adjusted her glasses, the recorder already plugged in. Once he hears this, she said quietly, there's no going back. I nodded. My heart pounded in my chest. For weeks I had replayed Brianna's insults in my head. Toxic, not invited, stay in the past. Tonight, my son would finally hear them too. Unfiltered, undeniable. The front door opened, and Daniel walked in. He looked tired, his smile thin and uncertain. Mom, Dad, what's going on? Richard gestured to the chair beside us. Sit down, son. We need to talk. Daniel hesitated, glancing between us. He must have sensed the tension, pressing against the air. Slowly, he lowered himself onto the couch, his hands resting uneasily on his knees. Is this about Brianna? My throat tightened, but I managed to whisper, yes. Nora leaned forward and pressed play. The room filled with Brianna's voice, smooth, sharp, rehearsed. You're not invited to the wedding, Mrs. Carter. He belongs to me now. Daniel stiffened, his head snapping toward me. His eyes searched my face, as if to ask if this was real. But the recording continued. Relentless. Michael doesn't waste money anymore. He belongs to me, and I'll keep him where I need him. With me, he'll have everything. Without me, he'd still be clinging to you. Each word cut through the room like glass. Daniel's hands shook as he pressed them over his face. When the recording ended, silence swallowed us whole. Finally, he lowered his hands. His eyes were wide, stunned, filled with something I hadn't seen in months' clarity. She actually said that? Yes, Richard said firmly. And it wasn't the first time. She's done this to other men before you. We have the records. Nora found them. Nora slid a folder across the table. Daniel opened it. His eyes scanning page after page, leases, photographs, financial records. His lips parted in disbelief. 3 names, fake pregnancy, restraining orders. His voice broke on the last word. All lies? My heart ached as I reached for his hand. Son, I didn't want to believe it either. But when she told me I wasn't welcome at your wedding, I knew something was wrong. I couldn't stand by while she erased us. Daniel's eyes brimmed with tears. He looked at me as if seeing me for the first time in months. Mom, you tried to protect me. Richard leaned in, his voice steady but fierce. She doesn't love you, Daniel. She controls you. And if you let her, she'll destroy everything. Your savings, your future, your dignity. Daniel's hands trembled as he pushed the folder away. For a long moment, he sat frozen, breathing unevenly. Then, slowly, he stood. His voice shook, but it carried resolve. I can't marry her. I need to end this. Relief flooded me, so sharp it felt like pain. Tears blurred my vision as I whispered, "Thank God." But deep down, I knew the battle wasn't over. Brianna would not go quietly. Daniel ended things the next morning. He returned the ring, his voice shaking but firm. Brianna's response was not silence. It was fire. The texts came first, long, venomous messages that shifted tone with every paragraph. One moment, she was sobbing, promising she could change. The next, she was spitting fury, accusing me of ruining her life and destroying Daniel's future. You'll regret this, one message read. He'll never forgive you. You've poisoned him against me. I sat at the kitchen table, reading her words aloud to Richard. My hands trembled, but not from fear, rather from the bitter reminder of how little she thought of us. Even in defeat, she saw herself as the victim. When Daniel blocked her number, she escalated. Letters arrived at his office, carefully worded but dripping with malice. She painted herself as a woman trapped by controlling parents, insisting Daniel was brainwashed. Some letters reached his co-workers, spreading rumors that he was unstable, that his family had interfered in his private life. Then came the online posts. Profiles appeared overnight, each one claiming to be a friend of Brianna's, spinning tales of abuse and manipulation, always with me cast as the villain. Toxic, interfering, unwanted. The same words she had once dropped in my kitchen now echoed across social media, claws reaching for strangers' sympathy. I won't lie, the sting returned. I would wake at night, hearing her voice in my head, replaying her cruel laughter, her casual claim that my son belonged to her. Even knowing the truth, the memory cut deep. But Daniel stood taller now. He ignored her messages, deleted her posts, and told his co-workers the truth. She doesn't control me anymore, he said simply. Richard reminded me each night, she's grasping because she's losing. Lies always shrivel in the light. And slowly, the storm began to pass. One evening, Daniel sat at our table again. Not as Brianna's fiancé, but as our son, free, though scarred. He looked at me, his eyes steady. Mom, I don't just want to move on. I want to make sure this doesn't happen to anyone else. It was then I realized Brianna's cruelty would not end our family. It would become the seed of something greater. The weeks after Daniel ended, the engagement felt like clearing rubble after a storm. He visited often, no longer guarded, no longer shadowed by Brianna. Sitting at the kitchen table, sipping coffee, he seemed like my son again. One evening, he spoke with quiet conviction. I don't just want to move on. I want to make sure others don't go through what I did. Manipulation isn't love. People need to know that. Richard and I exchanged a look. For months, we had saved for his wedding $60,000 mocked by Brianna as a consolation prize. That night, we pulled the envelope from the drawer. It would not rot in bitterness. It would become seed money. With Nora's guidance, we built the Carter Initiative, a small nonprofit to help victims of deception. Richard handled the finances. Nora offered her investigative insight, and Daniel became its voice. The launch took place in a modest hall near the Charleston riverfront. Fresh paint brightened the walls, and lilies scented the air. A simple banner read, "The Carter Initiative, for those who deserve freedom." Daniel stood at the podium. His voice shook at first, then steadied. He thanked Richard, thanked Nora, and then turned to me. My mother saw what I couldn't. She protected me when I didn't know I needed protecting. Because of her, I stand here today, free and determined to help others. The crowd applauded, but it was his words that healed me. Brianna had branded me toxic, unwanted. Yet my son, in front of strangers, called me his savior. For the first time, the wound began to close. That evening, after the foundation's launch, I returned to the kitchen where it all began. The oak chair Brianna once touched still stood at the head of the table. Weeks ago, her smirk had turned it into a symbol of defeat. Now, I saw it differently. I placed my grandmother's old recipe box on the seat cards filled with ink, flour stains, and the heritage of family meals. It felt like reclaiming what had been mocked and nearly stolen. Daniel walked in quietly. He looked at the chair, then at me. "I'll never forget what she said in this room, Mom. But I'll also never forget what you did to save me." My throat tightened. It wasn't just me. It was the truth. And the truth always wins in time. He smiled faintly, kissed my forehead, and left me alone with the silence. I sat at the table, running my hand across the smooth wood, whispering to myself, "The chair is the same, but I am not." Brianna had called me toxic, had tried to erase me, but she failed. What survived was not her cruelty, but my son's clarity, our family's resilience, and a foundation that would help others break free from chains like his. The lesson was clear. Money reveals the heart, but dignity is the only inheritance no one can steal. As the magnolia scent drifted through the window, I closed the recipe box and smiled. Justice had not roared in this kitchen. It had whispered, and that whisper was enough. "You're not invited to the wedding, Mrs. Carter. Daniel belongs to me now. Oh, and take your $60,000 back. Consider it a consolation prize." Those words struck harder than any storm that ever swept across Charleston. They dropped into my kitchen like stones, rattling every photograph on the wall and every memory in my heart. If you're watching this, subscribe and tell me where you're watching from. I stood frozen in the doorway, my hand gripping the wooden frame as if it could keep me upright. My husband, Richard, came up behind me, his palm steady on my shoulder. Yet nothing could steady the fire that spread through my chest. Brianna, my son's fiancée, didn't even wait for permission. Her heels clicked across the tiles of the kitchen Richard and I had built over 40 years, each strike a drumbeat of arrogance. She brushed her manicured hand against the old oak chair at the head of the table, the very chair where Daniel had eaten his cereal before school, where he practiced spelling lists, where we said grace before every meal. Her touch turned that chair into a weapon, as if she were staking a claim on history that was never hers. The air smelled faintly of coffee, mingled with magnolia blossoms drifting in from the garden. It had always been a scent of comfort, of family, but now Even the air seemed poisoned by her words. Toxic, she called me, as if years of sacrifice. Nights waiting for Daniel to come home safe, weekends spent working extra shifts just to save for his college, could be reduced to a single slur. I wanted to scream, wanted to shout that I had carried Daniel through every storm, that I had held him up when he broke his arm at Little League, that I had stood in the rain at his graduation with tears of pride. Instead, my voice failed me. Silence wrapped around me like chains. Richard's jaw tightened, but he stayed calm. He knew one outburst would cost us everything, so he waited. But I couldn't wait. I whispered, barely audible. Why, Brianna? Why erase us? She smirked, smoothing her dress as if she had already won. Because some people belong in the past. And that's where you'll stay. Her heels clicked away, the door slamming behind her like a verdict. I stood in the kitchen, staring at the chair she had touched. My chest ached, as if all the years of motherhood had been stripped from me in an instant. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat at the table with the recipe box my grandmother had given me, its cards stained with ink and flour. Next to it lay the envelope labeled Wedding Fund, $60,000, both symbols of sacrifice, both mocked by Brianna's cruelty. As dawn broke over the Charleston rooftops, I whispered to myself, she thinks she has won. But this isn't the end. Not yet.